We lived in a small apartment till I was 6 or 7. We lived in government-subsidized housing, and then it was 5 of us in a 1-bedroom apartment. You know, we kind of came through it, but I think that if you don't experience struggle, it will be very hard for you to thrive.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of More Than a Sale, where it's not just about the successes, it's about the failures, the heartbreaks, the setbacks to get to where you are today. And today I have
Ryan Rabinovich.
A trail and blazing figure in the pre-construction industry. He is the founder of Rare Real Estate. Generate more than $12 billion in real estate. He represents some of the biggest and the best project in the GTA in pre-con sales.
Ryan, welcome to More Than a Sale.
If you really want to accomplish something great, you have to be willing to sacrifice and dedicate yourself to it. Like, be disciplined. Oh, you work towards that goal, you didn't get what you want, work harder. You're not where you want to be in life, work harder. Keep working. The solution to you becoming everything that you want to be is in the work. Hard work pays off. You don't know when hard work is going to pay off, but it will definitely pay off at some point. Until it pays off, work. The solution to every single hurdle you face is work harder.
Ryan, welcome to More Than a Sale.
Thank you so much, Ron, for the kind intro, and looking forward to a great discussion.
So how have you been? What have you been up to?
Been good, man. Just got the family life going on and obviously the business, and every day is a new learning experience. I'm really at a, I think, pivotal point in my life, like business-wise.
Yeah.
And just kind of going through the motions and trying to retain as much as I can and make decisions every day. And sometimes it's easy and some decisions are hard. You just...
What's that point for you right now?
Have you ever played video games? I'm not much of a gamer, but
yeah.
This is kind of like the best way to explain it. I would say if you play a video game and let's say you've reached level 5 on your game, you know?
Yeah.
You pass the first 5 levels. If you have to start at the first level again,
Yeah.
it takes you no time to get to level 5, right?
Right.
But it takes you a long time to break through to level 6. I think that's where I'm at with my business. Like, I could start a company and get it to a very certain point, pretty far along, like, admittedly, without any issues. But to actually find that breakthrough to get myself to the next level, that's where I'm at right now. So you're really clawing at it inch by inch.
And what's that next level for you?
Just want to build like a healthy business. I'm not looking to build on the pre-construction side. Not looking to build like, you know, a company that takes over the world. And we want to build a small, very service-based business that's, you know, prioritizing our clients and their needs and finding the best outcomes for them. But even to do something that sounds as simple as that, very difficult, right? Because developers have a lot of needs right now in a slower market, and living up to those expectations and actually finding ways to break through those barriers and exceeding their expectations is something that's on my mind 24/7. Like, literally, I think about it every day right now, is how do I break through to the next level and blow my clients' expectations out of the water. And that's how I would feel good about what I'm doing, is if I'm over-delivering for them.
So tell me about that. We always hear the front end of sales where agents come in, they bring their clients, sales end up happening. What does the back end look like from a sales operation?
2 years ago, if you would ask me, it would be very different. The answer has completely changed over the last 2 years. Now, there's a lot of hand-holding that's happening. There's a lot of advisory that's happening. You're constantly trying to stay active because we're in a market right now where you try something, you try to activate cooperating agents, you try to activate the outside realtors, you try to activate their buyers. It's most likely going to fail, right? You still got to try all of these different things, but right now the frequency, the cadence of trying different things needs to be very high. So you're trying something, it fails. You're trying something else, that fails. You're trying something else, that fails. You're trying something else, that works. You double down on that, but in the meantime, you keep trying something else and see what else could work, right? So you're trying to kind of double down on what works, but constantly try different things at the same time to see if you can expand the amount of things that work, because right now they work at a very minimal scale. If I do something with you, maybe you can bring to the table 3 deals or 5 deals or 7 deals, which is great, but that's not enough for the development to move forward.
Yeah.
So I need to do that 10 more times, but that may not work for 10 other agents. I have to find other things that work for those agents. So right now you're constantly trying to innovate and try to engage and try to find meaningful ways to bring people in who are passionate about your development, passionate about doing business with you, and trust you enough to bring their clients over and say, this is where you should be investing, right? This is where you should be buying. This is where you should be living. But because the buyer pool right now in the market is so shallow, there is not one solution, right? You have to constantly evolve and try.
So we see different marketing strategies. And the way I like to position it is this. Just like how an agent would sit down with the seller to list their property, to market, to advertise, to show them why they are the best agent to sell their property, you're doing that, but on the development side, which is their building project, we are the best company positioned to sell your product, and here's why we feel why. You're giving them the listing price of what you think that the product should be worth at. You're sharing the marketing strategy from what I'm understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, and you're also laying out a plan of how operations are going to run and how you are going to facilitate the sales process. Am I right?
But again, we're not, and by design, we're not in this business to be a solution for every developer. We are in this business, and the kind of clients that we're after are clients that want to work with us for a lifetime, not for a project. That is how we seek alignment with our client base. We're not for everyone, and we're not for every market, right? Like in a hot market, you can hire almost any company and do well. In a cooler market, the service aspect, the level of expertise, the level of advice, the level of strategic thinking, and the ability to execute, those are the difference makers. So for us, we also have an idea in our head of who we want to work with. We've said no to projects before. We're getting calls right now. Like, I think there's a lot of movement in our industry right now. Developers are looking for other solutions because maybe the company that they are with right now isn't working for them, and they want to find, and that happens to us too. I think it happens to anyone. And so we have a pretty vivid image in our head on who we want to work with as well.
And who is that? And describe that to me. What is that ideal client for you?
First of all, ideal client for us, this is a recent lesson. We were talking about recent lessons. This is a very recent lesson that I've learned, is in a slow market, you have to be able to be nimble. For you to be nimble, you have to have a direct line of communication to the ultimate decision maker. That doesn't mean that you can't collaborate with their executives, with their VPs or directors and move things forward. But if something gets stuck, you know that you could pick up the phone and call the owner, call the CEO and say, hey, we're thinking about doing this, this, and this. We cannot take a week to make a decision. We need a decision today or tomorrow morning. Just to be able to do that, and maybe you use it 1 out of 100 times, or maybe you use it never, but just to know that you could do that, that is definitely something we're looking for now. And that's a very recent realization. In addition to that, we're looking for companies that are hungry and passionate about their development business and how we can complement it. If we feel that we can complement their development efforts, that's another thing that we're looking for. We want long-term alignment. And I've said that a moment ago. If you're coming and hiring Rare for a project, it's cool. And we're not going to nix the conversation out, but we're going to be in that boardroom trying to say, like, is there any way that we could work together for the next 30 years? Because that is a huge hurdle for us. Like, if we see a path to work with you for 30 years, even if your development isn't the sexiest, even if the market is slow, even if we have to work super hard to make very little money, we'd be interested because we want that longevity to our relationship.
Right.
We don't want it to be transactional. We want it to be relationship based.
Right. How does that process look like when you know that a developer is coming out with a particular building, and let's say they've been working with a sales company for an X amount of years, and they've been using this sales and marketing company regularly. And now you kind of got the word, or maybe you found out, or maybe they personally reached out to you, hey, we'd like to interview for the position. How does that interview process look like? A lot of people don't know about that actual process. Like, I know how a listing presentation looks like. You're doing your own version of the listing presentation. What kind of questions are being thrown at you? What kind of things are being asked of you? Kind of share with our audience and listeners.
Really imagine if you're like a seller of a house, a resale home, you know, maybe you have $1 million or $2 million home that you want to sell or whatever. Yeah. Like, imagine how selective you are in selecting your ultimate listing agent, right? Like, that's a pretty rigorous process. You're leading hundreds of agents. You've been there yourself. You know, sellers are pretty selective around who they pick to represent them. So now multiply that by 200, right? Because now you're dealing with $300-400 million developments. Yeah. And there's a lot on the line for these developers, because if I'm a seller of a house, right, and I don't sell my house, I take it off the market, and, you know, my family still lives there. And generally, it's the negative consequence is low, right? Like, short of me having to lose my house for, something unforeseen, an extreme financial circumstance, generally a seller that doesn't sell their house, nothing changes in their life. When a developer fails on a development, the stakes are really high, right? Like the servicing cost of just carrying the land loan, right, is massive, right? The cost of maybe launching something and failing in the marketplace, right? There's a cost to that. Now people associate that development to, maybe have like a bit of a stigma to it. Maybe you didn't hit it because of, the location or the developer or whatever, or the sales team, right? So the stakes are really, really high. So when you're in that boardroom, the developers really ask you some tough questions around what you bring to the table. And you can't hide behind fancy marketing, and you can't hide behind, stock answers, and you can't, find motivational quotes to get you through those meetings, because you're sitting there short of polygraph being connected to your arm, like you're sitting there getting quizzed and constantly challenged by very sophisticated sellers who are the developers. And they want to know, what are you going to do to make this thing pop, to make it fly? For me, I don't know about other teams, but for me, every development has a different hit factor. Like every development has a different element that could make it be well received in the market. So when I walk into those sales meetings, like it's not like, let me copy and paste this presentation and put their brand and take their logo out and put their logo in. And it's like, no, like speak to my partner, speak to my team. They'll tell you, like, I drown myself for 5-6 days in trying to find out everything I can around the developer, their history, the background of the site, how they came to acquire the site, what the development and entitlement process has been like. Why is the city excited about even giving them an approval to do this project? And I go so deep that by the time I sit in their boardroom, I think many times the developer is surprised at my level of intimate knowledge around the site. Sometimes I know more than their VP of development or their own VP of sales about their own site, because I immerse myself in it. So I'm an expert on that site when I sit in their boardroom, and they feel it. We don't get every development we go and pitch for, obviously, like failure is part of it, and we definitely take our L's. I love those, by the way. But we always leave an impression. Like no one walks out of a meeting with us and say like, those guys weren't ready. No one would ever say that. And that's something that I'm very proud of, because even though we don't get every single pitch, we walk out of there and leave an impression on every single pitch. And that's just as important, because our industry is small. And if you didn't get a development today, and by the way, that is literally, I'm in the process of that happening to me right now with 2 different developers. We went, we pitched, we lost. Another team was selected. We're getting called now. We want you to do our next thing with us. And that's because we left an impression the first time we were there. Maybe we weren't the right fit for that specific project, or maybe we were a bit of a gamble because we were a newer company. As we evolve as a business, as our track record evolves, developers, I think about us as a serious candidate for any opportunity that comes up.
So when you say that sometimes you take L's, when you don't win that listing, or you don't get that contract with the builder, what do you do? Do you call them back to find out, hey, what were your deciding factors? What didn't you like about it? Do you ask for feedback, or do you sort of just, you say thank you for your time and you move on, and hoping that, maybe down the road there's another development that you can pitch to again?
You've known me for a while, right?
Yeah, I have known you.
Do you think your impression of me?
Yeah.
Do you think I'm competitive in my nature?
I think
just the way you know me.
Yes and no. I would say we're all competitive in a certain standpoint, but I don't think your competition doesn't strive from someone has to lose in order for me to win, if I may say so. Your competition is your competition within yourself. Your competition is you and you facing yourself. If I may say so, it's me versus me. That's your competition. So in a way that I think you're asking me, no, I've never seen you in a competitive limelight where you want your other friends to lose and you to win. Not
right,
like that.
Right. And so I grew up playing like very competitive sports. I've been playing soccer my whole life at a very, very high level. I think I'm actually very competitive. I just don't appear that way at the surface level, because I'm not a traditional type of competitive character. Like, I don't want people around me to lose. I don't want to like do one over you. Like, But what I am really competitive about is, and that loops back to your question, like when a developer says we're not going with Rare, I take a full day to assess where we fell short. And that's a process that I take very seriously because I want to understand why we weren't selected. Maybe it made sense for us not to be selected. I'm not saying it didn't. For that developer, based on that site, their criterias, maybe we weren't the right fit. And even if we can't fix it, I want to know why. So I do call the developers after and I do talk to them. And I do want to know what made you select the other team over us? Where did we fall short? And it's not because I'm trying to hard pitch them on doing the site. I just want to learn. I want to know. If someone does something that I don't do and you appreciate that, I want to know what that is. I want to maybe do that too. Maybe it's not a right fit for me, but maybe it is. I want to replicate certain things that work for someone else, just like someone else looks at us and says, Rare does this. I want to be able to replicate that. We have a really talented pool of professionals in our industry. So when I look right and left, I see very, very smart people that spearhead teams like mine. To say that I can't learn from those guys, how ignorant is that? How ignorant is that? To think that I know all the answers, like how silly is that? Like I'm setting myself up for long-term failure. For sure I want to know. And I want to hear the developer's perspective about it. And sometimes like I'll call some of the other team leads and I'll spend some time talking to them about their business and they'll spend time talking to me about mine. I want to be fully transparent if I'm getting that transparency back because we can all help each other. And ultimately, like, this is a very small market. You don't want to bury people. You want to keep relationships, even at a status quo where you walk into a room, you can shake people's hands. You know, the energy doesn't just drop because like, oh, this guy, like he screwed me out of a deal. Like he cut my fee by half and that's how you want. Like, I don't want to be that guy. If I have nothing nice to say, I will say nothing. I really just keep that to myself. For sure, I want to know every time what went wrong. Like it just happened to me. It happened to me 3-4 weeks ago, maybe 6 weeks ago. I was invited to a developer's house. We were talking for a bit. You know, we were in his home, having breakfast together, talking about us doing this development. He said, like, you know, they came to our office the second time around. We had a great conversation, good site, you know, like would definitely have wanted to do it. You know, we have our fee structure. And he says, like, we really love you guys, but we're going to go with the other team, right? And he said that over email. So I obviously called them. There were 3 of them. I called him first, and then the other 2 I emailed, and I said, let's set up a separate call with each because I don't want one's perspective to influence the other. So I wanted to have, because there were 3 of them, I wanted to have 3 separate conversations to understand everyone's different perspective. And one was saying like, you know, your fee was high and we didn't feel like you would come down. And one of them said, we felt like they were thinking about launching in September. And they said, we feel like maybe your Q3, Q4 is already kind of locked in and we wouldn't have your focus, right? Like all super legitimate reasons, right? So I'm like, okay, I get it. Like I'm not trying to hard sell them back on me because they've made their decision and I respect it. But at least now I know like what stopped them from going forward with us. And some of these things are within my ability and some of them are not. And I just have to think about it and process it that way.
Let me ask you a question. When you are working with these developers, first off, the question that I want to ask you is, we always talk about successful agents. What makes a successful agent? Things that agents should be doing. From your standpoint in the same industry that we're in, what makes a successful listing brokerage or sales and marketing company for these pre-construction developments? What are some of the traits? And also talk to me about what do you think is lacking as well? You know, I would really love to hear your mindset, because when I speak on a forefront of agents doing business or doing transactions on the ground floor, I know where the challenges are. From my perspective, from my understanding, I see where the issues come from. I also see what's going to drive someone's success and what's not going to drive someone's success. How do you see that from your side of the world, not for the agent, but from the sales, marketing, listing brokerage for these builder projects, without taking any names?
I think the biggest thing, not the biggest thing, but one of the major kind of pillars of being successful is planning ahead. For progress, like progress has to be planned for, right? Otherwise, and we were talking about it earlier, if you don't plan ahead, anything that happens to you is just the natural evolution of your business, of your life, right? Like you need to plan how you get ahead for you to get ahead by design versus by coincidence. I think we take a very proactive approach in trying to know exactly what we're doing at every stage of the sales cycle. And then we present that to the developer. And so we will have a plan for 12 weeks. We know everything that happens 6 weeks leading to the launch and then 6 or 8 weeks out of the launch. And we know every initiative, we know every Instagram post, and we literally have a path for all of it. Things, of course, change throughout that period of time. Things change, things evolve, something pops up. You want to talk about this, you want to talk less about that. You've had conversation and you realize this is a major selling point that maybe you didn't see. And so now that gets integrated into your campaign. But generally, we want to be ahead of everything. And you've worked with us, you know. I'll be surprised if you even read my emails leading up to the launch, but there's a lot of them. We want to be very proactive about what we do.
I love your emails, by the way. I have to say it. Anyone that has ever received an email from Ryan, he's done all the homework for you. He's done all the math for you. You just have to put it into action. Right. That's all you have to do. It's so structured. It's so organized. It's so easy to understand. You know, all you got to do is read it. If you can't read it, then, you know, then we have a problem. You know, I've been guilty of missing some of these emails. And Ryan, did you read my email? Let me call you right back.
At least you're admitting it.
Arguably the best marketing in the GTA when it comes to launches, the special touch that you bring to these developments, the style that you bring, and each project has its own story that you tell, and they're different. It's not like the same. Of course, the touch is the same, but the aspects are so different and unique. And it's called I like to call it the rare touch. I'm sure you guys have your own version of it. So whoever is doing the marketing for you guys, talk to me about that marketing process, because you've launched some incredibly successful developments. You have changed the way marketing should be done for certain pre-construction projects, the way launches are done. This could be a whole nother episode of me just praising how you run and operate, because I like the way you operate and you run things. When you work with some people, they operate, I was use this example. They operate from the high table. You are not operating from the high table. You're operating on the ground floor with everybody along with you, if that makes sense. And that's your leadership style. You like to be in the battle with everybody. And that's also my leadership style. I want to be in the battle. I don't want to operate from the high table and just drive out orders and someone else carrying out my orders. I'm not there yet, but I don't think I ever will be, because I actually enjoy that process of being with everybody, seeing what's going on, watching the action. Okay, this is not working. Let's figure this out. Oh, that's not working. Okay, let's change our approach. And you've done that so incredibly well, because I've seen you pivot so many times. And if one approach wasn't working, bam, second approach. That wasn't approaching, third approach. Fourth approach, okay, let's figure out what's going on. Let's try to dive deep a little bit deeper as to why are these things not working,
right?
You know, and then kind of come to terms with it.
Yeah.
So am I right, or would you?
First of all, thank you. It's very kind of you to say. We definitely spend a lot of time thinking about it, and thinking about it is one thing, and then executing it is another skill. But we're also like, I cannot take the credit, right? Like, we have been lucky to work with very talented developers who, you know, are aligned with us in the way they want to approach development sales. We've been lucky that we've been collaborating with some very talented marketing teams and design teams. It's not like, you know, the rare way. It's a very collaborative approach to, like, again, the way we govern ourselves is, I always just ask, and I always try to inspire my team to ask, what is the best thing for our client? That's the question that our whole business revolves around, is what is the best thing for our client? How can we do the best things for our client? If we do that, if we just govern ourselves by that sole principle, how do we create great outcomes for our client? All of our lives are going to be great, because our outcomes are intrinsically tied to theirs. If their development does well, we do well. If their development doesn't do well, we don't do well. Just as simple as that. So we always try to think, okay, like, we have a development, how do we package it up? What are the big selling points? Like, is it on transit? Like, what's the development story? Is there scale? Is there, you know, great value offering? Is it a end user thing? Like, we try to find the hooks, and that happens through a lot of conversations leading up to the campaigns even launching, because your feedback, you know, there's a select group of brokers that we do a lot of business with in the GTA. Your collective feedback is critical to the way we put a product out. It's critical from everything from floor plan design, which you guys have a say in, to how the brand feels, how the marketing looks, what are the touch points. Your feedback, you guys are part of the process just as much. When we think about our clients, we don't even only think about our developers. We think about our agents, our top producing realtors, our top producing brokerages, because again, we want to align our outcomes with yours, because if you do well, we do well. So when I say client, I don't just mean the developers. I mean our agents that we do a lot of work with. I mean your clients, your buyers that you entrust to bring into our developers. If we find a way for everyone to do well, we're going to do well. And so we spent a lot of time researching. We spent a lot of time having conversations. We spent a lot of time with focus groups. We spent a lot of time with our marketing teams and the developers and, the architects and the interior designers. But ultimately, what you see in the market is the product of having a million little conversations with all the different stakeholders of the process to understand how we can make the product appeal to the masses, because you do need it to appeal to the masses when you're talking about, a scale of 400 or 500 units in a building. For the project to go ahead, you have to appeal to people at scale.
I want to ask you, when you and I sit down together, we have many discussions. We have discussions about life, philosophy, what we believe in, and we also talk about family. For our audience and our listeners that are tuned in to More Than a Sale podcast, share with them your story. How did you get started? How did this all come to be?
How did I get started in real estate?
Yeah.
When I finished high school, I took a little bit of time off to write my SATs. I was supposed to go to the United States to play Division I soccer for a school. I got a scholarship offer in a university in Georgia, and I was supposed to go down there. In the summers, I had this window cleaning business that I started when I was 16.
What company were these, the window cleaning companies? There was only 2-3 companies. I remember when I was in university, they pitched it.
No, but I started
Oh, you did it
own.
on your own. Yeah. You know what I'm talking about there, right?
It was called, I think you're talking about like student
Yeah.
window washers or something.
Yeah.
My company was called Y&I, which is my initials, like mine and my sister's initials. My sister had nothing to do with the company, but I love her. So I had this little window cleaning business that I started, and I used to give people quotes. By the time I graduated from high school, I had 2 crews working for me doing the work. So I was just literally giving quotes, and I gave a quote one day to this lady, and she said, "Can you just do this one window on the second floor on the inside of the house? That way when your team comes, they could just do the exterior." And I was like, yeah, sure. I had the ladders in my car. I climbed up 24 feet barefoot, slipped, fell from 24 feet, I had 4 fractures in my right leg. And that was at the end of June. That was at the end of June 2000. And I was supposed to start Georgia for preseason training the first week of August, and I just had 4 fractures in my. So I didn't even tell my coach in Georgia that I'm injured. I'm supposed to show up, and my recovery time here, the doctors are telling me 12 to 16 weeks. So obviously, anyway, long story short, my coach calls me when I don't show up for preseason, and I tell him I just need another week or 2. Do you mind? I'll train at home, but I'm literally with a hard cast on my leg. Can't do anything.
You're buying time.
2 weeks later, the way it works in NCAA is every team has an allocation of funds that's dedicated to pay for the athletes on that team. So let's say if tuition is $50,000 a person, the soccer team gets $500K. How the coach disperses it is up to him. Maybe this guy gets a full ride, $50K. This guy gets zero. But he has $500,000 to play with. I was allotted a certain amount of money from his pool that he wasn't able to use on anyone else. And then 2 weeks later, he called me and he's like, pardon my language, what the fuck is going on? Something's up. What's up? And then I told him, I'm at home with a cast on. So they took away my scholarship because I obviously wasn't able to play. They gave the money to another student. That was great. And I didn't have anything to do. So I ended up going here to Seneca College on late admission because someone that I knew the soccer coach. So I was playing for the Seneca soccer team for the next 3 years while I graduated. In that time, I had a girlfriend who was super smart. She was way smarter than me, way more talented than me, very charismatic. She got a real estate license when she was 19. We were together. So I was in school and working odd jobs. She was doing real estate. And we were 19, 20. She was making $150,000, $200,000. She was in school. She was in university making $150,000 a year, $200,000 a year. It's not a typical story of every agent because, most agents don't have that type of career trajectory, but she was just really talented. And my mom got licensed at the same time. And then I graduated school and I started working at the Bank of Montreal and I hated it. I hated the 9 to 5. I hated, telling my manager when I needed to go for a break or if I went to the washroom, or I just hated the whole thing, So I didn't last there very long and I didn't know what to do after I resigned. So I was like, you know what? I wasn't with the same girlfriend anymore. I was actually with my new girlfriend, who's my wife now. Just said let me go get my real estate license and see what happens. I really kind of stumbled upon it. I don't want to sit here and say like, yeah, man, I was dreaming my whole life about being a real estate agent. Like I was dreaming about taking people and, selling their homes and buying. Like, that was not a thought in my mind. Like if you would ask me when I was 15, 16, 17, 18, like, do you want to be a realtor? I was like, what? No desire for that. But my passion evolved through actually coming into the business and doing it and meeting a lot of interesting people and doing things that I like. Did resale for a few years, had a fair amount of success doing that. Started selling pre-con as a resale agent. Very early days, 2007, 2008. And then I thought I wanted to be a developer, a real estate developer. So I didn't know anything about it. I said, how do I learn? Let me just go get a sales job for a developer. So I got a sales job for a real estate developer. Was there for 5 years, learned a lot. And then from there, like just my passion for development and sales of developments, I really developed a passion on the job. I didn't come in with a passion for it. And now I just feel so thankful. Seriously, I feel so thankful that I do what I do, and it's not without its, hiccups. It's not rosy every day. There's things that happen where you really like ask yourself like, man, like what am I doing this for? I think that happens to every entrepreneur. But overall, I just feel really lucky to do something that I love, be surrounded by super smart people all the time, have conversations about things like the business, but also life. And, that contributes a lot to my personal evolution as a man, as a father, as a husband. So I just feel really lucky to be in this business surrounded by these people.
And you have 4 beautiful boys. You have a beautiful family, and you're a family man. And I remember when my father was going under, I was telling you that my father had a triple bypass surgery. Yeah. You gave me a talk on the phone as well, and you said, go be with your family. Don't even worry about anything. Just whatever you're working on, nothing is as important as where you are right now. And that was a very touching call that you had given me, and I was very thankful for that because I processed that afterwards. And then we had a deep conversation on the phone, literally right outside my office. I didn't even go inside because the elevator kind of breaks the signal, so I was just standing outside of the building of what I had to get in. So let me ask you, what's it like, being a father of 4, managing the family life and then the work life, and we know how crazy it gets in the work life as well for real estate. If I am having a hard time and getting stressed about our management, no wife, no girlfriend, no children, and you have all of that, and how do you do it? What's your take on that?
What you went through with your dad, I think, I was obviously sorry to hear about your dad's health. I'm happy to hear that he's recovering really well. Like I know we connected about it. Family is a grounder, right? Like you can get caught up in the hype and you can get caught up in making money and really feel good about yourself and, judging who you are by your business success, but that's the wrong barometer, right? It's like buying real estate based on price per square foot alone. And, that's an important barometer, but it's not the ultimate barometer. Like you want to know the location, you want to know the end price, does it make sense, the unit size. So to me, family is a grounder. And I am incredibly lucky. My wife and I have been together. August this year will be 20 years. So we've been together for a long time. She knows me. She was with me when we had nothing. And we've built a life together. We've built a family together. She gives me the freedom to operate, but I think she does that because she knows that irrespective of anything else that's going on in my life, there's no bigger priority to me than my family. Like as busy as I am, I personally take my kids to 90% of their practices, they play sports, of their practices and games. 90%. Wow. Like, wow. I don't care how tired I am, how beat up I am. I'm not coming home and, sitting on the couch, watching TV or on my phone. Like, not to say that I'm always present in the moment. There's things going on and maybe I have my phone with me, but like, I will take them to practice almost every time. I will take them to games almost every time. I will dedicate every ounce of energy that I have to them. I come home from work tired, doesn't matter. Them, read with them, bathe them, change diapers, whatever I need to do, and give my wife the attention that she needs as well, because she's the anchor of our home. Like she holds it down, and she's a big supporter of me and what I'm trying to accomplish for our family. But she also knows that as busy as I am, a family is a huge priority. She is a huge priority to me, and we make it work. There's I think one of the luckiest aspects of my life is when I come home, there's perfect peace there for me. Like our house is crazy, actually. You can imagine 4 boys running around, you're sitting on the couch, someone is tossing a ball, it hits you across the head when you're like, they always want to play. They want to go down to the basement and play soccer or play hockey or, roller skate in the basement or whatever they want to do. They'll almost always find an active participant in me. So our house, the energy in our house is very, very busy, but it's super peaceful. Like there's a good vibe in our house. My wife and I don't fight. Our kids are generally respectful. They're really energetic boys, but they're generally respectful. They get along. They also fight, but boys will be boys. But it's just fun being at home.
Yeah.
It's not easy, but it's fun.
You made a comment earlier. You said, my wife's been with me since we had nothing. What does nothing look like to you?
We didn't come from money. When I met her, she was working at like a factory. She had to wake up at 5 a.m. And if you look at her, I think this is a totally different era. And I say that with a ton of humility. Like women that look like her don't work in factories, if you know what I'm trying to say. Like she was like waking up at 5 a.m. Her and her sister, she has a twin. They were like getting on a bus to come to a factory in Brampton to work from 7 a.m. to 3 p.m., come home. She has a great work ethic and she's very committed. And for us, like when we grew up, like my parents separated when I was 6 months old. So I didn't even see my dad until I was 11. He's a big influence in my life now. We've reconnected in a really meaningful way. But when I was younger, like we lived in government-subsidized housing. My mom was working 2 jobs to make sure we're not missing anything and to give my mom the credit that she deserves. We never felt like we were missing anything. We didn't need much. But if I wanted something, like if I really wanted something, and when you're 10, 11, 12, like I'm talking like 25, 30 years ago, like what do you want? You want to hang out with your friends. You want to have whatever we needed, we had. Maybe not everything we wanted, but what we needed, we really had. We lived in a small apartment. My mom, my sister, and I lived in government-subsidized housing, and then we moved in with my grandmother and my grandfather. So it was 5 of us in a 1-bedroom apartment. We kind of came through it. I cannot overstate how thankful I am for those periods. I think that if you don't experience struggle, it will be very hard for you to thrive, because if you've never faced anything, like how do you know how to deal with life, which inevitably at some point life hits you in the chin, and then are you able to deal with it or are you not? And if you don't have a set of experiences to lean on and say like, yeah, I've been through adversity before, how do you overcome adversity if you don't have that experience? So we earned everything we have. When we came to Canada, like for the first little while, my mom and I was 16 when I came to Canada, my mom and I were sleeping in the same bed as a 16-year-old. Like imagine that. My mom and I were sleeping in the same bed in a motel, right? Until we could afford basement apartment. From a basement apartment, we went to a 1-bedroom, rental apartment in a rental building. Everything that we have, we earned. We worked for it. We weren't given anything. I'm so proud of my mom. She's been incredible. I'm so grateful for everything that she's done for us. And everything that we have is because of the example she set out for us, what we've learned from her and the experiences we've gained through life. But
was it difficult for her? I'm sure it wasn't easy. Were there moments when you're witnessing as a 16-year-old or 15-year-old, like my mom's really, it's getting harder and harder and harder on her? Was there ever a moment like that? I mean, especially single-handedly raising?
I think you should ask my mom actually, but I think both my sister and I think I don't know where it comes from, and I want to be careful in the way I phrase it, but I think my sister and I have the ability just naturally. I don't know where it comes from. I think because we've been surrounded by people that really care about us. Like our grandparents really cared about us. My mom really cared about us. My father later. I think my father always cared about us. He's just like kind of had his own thing going. We have the ability to have a sense of what's going on around us and adapt to it. When we've seen how hard my mom works, when she came home, we weren't like giving her a hard time, like we were trying to be like be less of a weight on her shoulder than more, less dependent, like when I was in daycare, 3-4 years old, my sister was 7, 8, 9, 10. We had a key to the house. Like my sister had it tied on a lace around her neck. She would pick me up from daycare. She would take the key off her neck, like get us into the apartment. We would be there just waiting for my mom to come to make us dinner. And then my sister got old enough. She started making us dinner. Like we were kind of developing our independence. And I think that the last time I asked my mom for anything, maybe when I was 11 years old. Like ever since I was 11, I started like figuring things out on my own. Like I would find ways to make the little bit of money I needed to get what I wanted, you know? I would walk through industrial areas when I was 12 with like a cooler and filled it with water and, you know, cans of Coke and whatever, and go from warehouse to warehouse and sold it to make a little bit of money to get me what I needed. You know, like I worked at like a convenience store. I worked at like a no frills type of grocery store. Do what I needed. Like at some point I was focused on making money more than school. I was 14 and I stopped going to school without telling my mom to go work full time at a grocery store, you know, and then my mom found out, and my mom is like the calmest person. She flipped out like when she found out, because the school was sending letters to my house like, where is he? We haven't seen him in a week, 2 weeks. And she's like, I was coming home hiding those letters. And then my sister and I were in the same school. They gave a letter to my sister, and my sister came home and she's like sitting on the couch like this. She's like, okay, let's see some fireworks tonight. Mom, here's the letter. My mom flipped. So I obviously went back to school. But like I wanted to find like little pockets for me to do things.
Would you say she's incredibly proud of you now?
I know she is. We're super close. My mom and I, like, we're super close. I know she's very proud of me. She's been proud of me always. Even when she didn't have many reasons to be proud of me, she's always been proud of me. Seriously, like she's always been proud of me.
You seem to have a lot of influences in your life. Who would you say are some of the most powerful influences that have helped you to get you to where you are today? You know, mentally and professionally.
My mom is a huge influence. For sure. She's a huge influence. My sister has been a huge influence. My dad later in life became a big influence. He's like a real character. Like there's a wealth of knowledge there.
Did you ever, that time period that he was not there for you, were you old enough to sort of process? Did you feel a certain different type of way versus it changed over a period of time?
About my dad?
Yeah.
Look, I didn't really know him until like I was in my kind of early teens, right? Like 10, 11, 12. That was just the norm. Because he wasn't a part of my life, like I grew up without that father figure. And so I got a lot of hard lessons on the streets, like where we lived, you know? Man, like I wouldn't change anything about my childhood, nothing. I wouldn't want more money. I wouldn't want other friends, like nothing. If I would have a chance to relive it all again, it would play out exactly the same way. I'm thankful for every moment, for every person that, you know, I cross paths with. My dad kind of came back into my life on a more regular basis. And that's also when I maybe opened the door for him to come into my life a bit more, was probably like when I was 18, 19, right around the time, like I lost out on my scholarship and I ended up going to school here. You know, I started talking to him more, and I realized like, wow, like there is a massive amount of knowledge in this man. And since then, like we're much closer, and I still learn from him every time we talk, because he's like a really special person, like really, really special. He's like perfect fusion between someone that has like for real street cred, like has done some crazy things in his life, and academically like the smartest person I know. It's like a Meyer Lansky, like I don't know if you watch like Casino, you know Robert De Niro, the character there, like that's my dad. Seriously, like that is my dad.
Wow.
It's amazing. Like when he comes over, I could be up with him till 3, 4, 5 in the morning, just talking, hearing his stories, hearing his perspective. Like, so my dad became a big influence later on in life. And then I had a few amazing professional influences, like Jason Atkins, who was my first mentor in real estate, who I'm thankful for until this day, has taught me like 10 years of real estate in 2 years that we were together, 2.5 years. When I started working my first job in development, I had a sales manager and a vice president of sales, both talented. You don't replicate everything you learn. You're like, oh, I like how she did that. I want to learn how to do that. Oh, I don't like how she did that. I want to learn how to avoid doing that, right? Like those lessons are just as important. And then when I was at Freed, you know, Peter Freed and I were very close, and he was like a great person to learn from, like things to do and things to avoid. And the CFO there at Freed when I was there, his name is Andrew Lepper, who's probably one of the smartest men I know. He's been definitely a mentor still to this day. So yeah, man, like I've been lucky. Like there hasn't been a ton of it, but the few people that came into my life have taught me a lot, even if they didn't mean to. Like sometimes you're just sitting in a boardroom after years of sitting in boardrooms with people that are way smarter than you. You come that's a great room to be in, right? Like if you're sitting in a room and you're the smartest guy in that room,
Yeah.
you're probably in the wrong room. I was lucky enough to be the least smartest in rooms a lot of the time. And like I learned a lot from being in those rooms.
Knowing what you know now, if you had to tell the younger Ryan something, what would you tell him? If any advice that you would have to give to the younger Ryan, what advice would you give him?
First of all, there's the investment advice, which, by the way, I would give to anyone listening here. This could be a hot take, but I would say invest in real estate. That is for sure an advice I would give to anyone that's young, is invest in real estate, because there's only two ways to learn things: through time or through money, right? Like if you want to become the best real estate agent, like sure, if you have a lot of money, you can hire a great coach and maybe, expedite your ability to become that great person. But short of paying a lot of money for that coaching, it takes time to do that. So there's really only two ways to learn. So if you had a chance to, let me ask you, if you had a chance to speak to Ron Sally in 20 years about maybe investing in real estate, would you say Ron Sally in 20 years from now would tell you to invest in real estate?
100%.
100%. So if you already know that this is the advice you would give your younger self, but you are your younger self, why not act on that advice today? Drag your future into your present. Take that advice that you would give yourself in 20 years and apply it now. So I would definitely give myself the advice to invest more younger. I did start investing very young, but I would invest more younger. Forget about, driving a fancy car or paying like exorbitant leases on whatever. No, like invest when there's very little on the line, when you don't have a lot of like meaningful overhead. Like right now, I have like big family that relies on me to produce now. So I'm my ability to invest is convoluted with my responsibilities as a man to my family. But that would be a piece of advice that I would give myself. Otherwise, I would really continue to double down on the work ethic. I think that's a real difference maker, is work ethic. Right? Like if you want to accomplish something great, you have to be willing to sacrifice and dedicate yourself to it. Like be disciplined for it, right? Think of anyone that you look up to. Anyone. Could be an athlete, could be like LeBron James, could be Drake, could be whoever you look up to. At some point in their life, to accomplish that great thing that you look up to them for, they had to sacrifice and be disciplined. You could do that in your late teens, early 20s, mid 20s, early 30s. You could do that. Hard work is key. Like dedication is key. Being able to sacrifice is key. And I always say you can get really meaningful results just by showing up. Right? Do you have agents in your office that maybe are not the smartest, maybe are not the brightest, maybe they're not the best agents, maybe they're not the best negotiators, but every day they hit the phones and they cold call? Are those guys steady producers? 75% of the fruits of your labor are just by showing up. You're already beating out 75% of the people out there, right? The other 15% is, being a good person, honest, like pleasant to deal with. That's really important. The last 10%, the difference maker, is how hard you're willing to fight for it. Like if you really want it, how hard are you willing to fight for it? Even when it doesn't go your way, how hard are you willing to fight for it? Because we know with hard work pays off. You know that phrase, hard work pays off, hard work pays off. Everybody says hard work pays off. It definitely does. The only caveat to that is you don't know when. You don't know when hard work is going to pay off, but it will definitely pay off at some point. Until it pays off, work. The solution to every single hurdle you face is work harder. Oh, you work towards that goal, you didn't get what you want, work harder. You're not where you want to be in life, work harder. You are where you want to be in life, work harder. You got what you want, keep working. The solution to you becoming everything that you want to be is in the work. If I would give my 20-year-old self advice right now, I would say work really hard. Forget all the distractions, and there's a lot of them now. Forget all of the distractions. Zone in on your goal and work for it, and invest in real estate.
I love that. That was extremely powerful. I feel like I could talk to you for hours, man. You and I could sit down and you can keep going and going. I want to finish off our podcast. You've shared some real insights into the business, into the industry, about your personal life, and about what it takes to be successful. The last question I have for you before we conclude is, who is Ryan Rabinovich?
Who is Ryan Rabinovich? Wow, that's what I hang my hat on is a devoted father and a partner to my wife. I think I'm like an optimist. I'm probably a realistic optimist. I am, in my nature, I am more introverted. Like if you leave me up to my vices, like I'd want to be on my own and, not be surrounded by people doing my own thing. But the nature of my job doesn't really allow me to do that. So I'm probably, my wife says that I'm the most extroverted introvert she's ever met. So I think I think I'm that. And I think I'm just really a person that wants to find and do good in the world. Really, like, I just want to try to do the right thing. Sometimes I can, sometimes I can't. But that is kind of my personal objective, is try to do good work, be a good father, be a good partner to my wife, be a good business partner, do good work for my clients, do good work on the philanthropy side. I'm very passionate about charity. That's who I am. And I really try to wear my heart on the sleeve. I am not a politician. I am not like the talk behind your back type. I'm not the gossiping type. I'm just like, what you see is pretty much what you get.
I love that.
Yeah.
Ryan, thank you so much for joining us on More Than a Sale. Ladies and gentlemen, once again, this was an extremely special episode. Stay tuned till next time.